Let us know what you've been thinking of the episodes we're filming from Clearwater Beach at the Collective Genius, the nation's premier group for real estate investors. You have to be doing at least 50 deals per year or more to be in the group. So we've brought the podcast studio here. And today we're talking with Clint Cooper, who made $125,000 on his first flip. Find out how he's grown the business since then, and tune in if you guys want to start doing real estate investing. Hey Clint, thank you so much for being here. And we're at Collective Genius. And I know one of the topics this afternoon was what's going to happen in 2025 from Bruce Norris based on what's happened historically in real estate markets. What was your takeaway from that presentation?
So he didn't give us like a full-on conclusion of what's going to happen, but he did show us a lot of data.
Yeah.
And what the data shows is we've experienced our runway of appreciation for a while. Same with rental rates. We've experienced the runway of price increases for quite some time. Since 2020, you know, the prices have exploded. And he's basically saying that that runway's at a halt. We should see prices stay very stagnant unless a bunch of foreclosures come on the market. But he doesn't expect that based off what he's seeing now. So he expects prices remain stagnant for quite some time until something changes. So not bad news, not really good news either. Like, you know, I'm trying to grow my rental portfolio currently, and I'm like, is this really a great time to buy when we're going to be sitting in a stagnant market for some time? You know, so it's something to think about, but it was a lot of information. I'm not much of it. I'm not a huge data guy.
Yeah.
And it was a lot of information to take.
I saw the second presentation was about interest rates.
Yep.
Somebody was speaking to that. What was your takeaway from where the interest rates might be headed? Did they have any predictions there?
So it looks like we're going to get some cuts in 2025.
Okay.
Prediction, I think, of 3 cuts.
Got it.
So that's good news, right? You know, the cost, I mean, just from that period, it was like during 2022 when interest rates went from 3% all the way up to 7% in a really quick time, caused a lot of issues in the market where a lot of stuff wasn't selling. People were created a lot of fear. And so we'll see what happens. You know, it's like, you know, economists and people that predict that type of stuff, it's like a weatherman. You know, even when they're wrong, they don't get fired the next day.
Yeah.
They still get paid to do their job. So
yes, it's not something that you can spend time worrying about because that doesn't happen. But a lot of times you can observe what is happening and change according to what's happening.
Absolutely. Yep.
Have you changed anything about your business when we had the interest rate hike from 3 to 7%?
Well, I think the main thing I did was a little bit nicer rehabs. So when taking our usual flip of everything was selling super fast, we could put the same product everywhere. Now we have to do a few extra things like accent walls, you know, maybe a nicer type of quartz countertops, something a little bit extra to stand apart from the other competition on the market. But other than that, not a huge shift. You know, it wasn't like we didn't experience like an 08 or 08 when, you know, the market just completely crashed. If things were still selling, there's still not that much inventory on the market in our area. And so not a huge shift, just some minor tweaks.
Got it. Yep. You said you were building your rental portfolio. Is that your main priority right now?
I wouldn't say it's my main priority. My main priority is the business, the flipping and wholesale business. We do somewhere between 10 and 20 houses a month, every month. And so our goal with the rental portfolio is just, hey, let's keep one of those. We're not going to make money now. We're going to get a nice tax write-off. Maybe 15, 20 years down the road, we'll see a big exit where we can sell these properties and they appreciated, you know, quite a bit.
Got it.
Yep.
How do you decide which one of the 10 to 15 you'd keep?
Well, in Atlanta, I'm in the Atlanta market, and majority of the houses are at a price point where if we were to get a loan on the property, say a 75% LTV loan, it's hard to achieve cash flow with where the price points are and where the rents are. So it's really just dependent on that. So if we can find like a $170,000 house that we can rent for $1,800 a month, that's what we want. It's very hard to achieve though. So we don't see too many of those opportunities, but when we do, we typically try to keep it in the portfolio.
Got it. That makes sense.
Yep.
One thing you said, when the interest rates went up, you actually started doing higher end flips. Was it because you thought that the higher end buyer might be not affected by interest rates because they have a bigger budget anyway and they can buy anything that they want? No,
I mean, we still kept mainly entry level products, right? So we're buying we try to flip below the median house price. So in Atlanta, it typically stays around 400, a little bit over 400,000. We want to be selling in the threes where our product is.
Right below the median.
Exactly, because that product is always going to move. There's always people for entry level homes. But what we did was just make them a little bit nicer to stand out in front of the other competition that was also in the threes. So
Got
it wasn't like a big shift in different buyer or anything like
Yep.
that. It was just like, let's be the most appealing at the best price.
Yeah, I kind of taken that approach with my rental properties. I'm just 19 and I self-manage those because I like to have control and know how the process works before hopefully I get to a point soon where I can just hire in-house, right?
Sure.
A full-time manager. But I always try to make the rental grade higher on my properties so that people would choose those and they have less vacancy, because I know that is kind of the main point of ROI when it comes to rental properties.
100%. I mean, I do the same, and I'm self-managing as well. I don't think my portfolio is not at the point where it warrants to hire someone full-time where I'm making enough money to do that. I think it's something I'm definitely going to have to do as it grows, because it's becoming a lot, especially as you get 2 to 3, 4, or 5 years into the portfolio. You start having vacancies and turns and whatnot, and things, it just becomes a lot more hectic. And my main thing is just keep the focus on the flipping and wholesale business, because that's what really
drives your cash.
That's the cash machine that fuels everything else.
Got it.
So
how'd you get into that, by the way? Remember your first deal?
Yeah. So I got into real estate. It was 4 years ago. It was actually 4 years ago this month. So I'm going on year 5. And I, joined a mastermind, got a coach right off the bat, didn't try to YouTube University or anything like that to start. And first thing I did and first thing I learned was, hey, realtors have a lot of pocket listings, right? And so I started cold calling realtors. Like a lot of people will get a list and cold call sellers. I did the opposite and called realtors. Made a lot of relationships very quickly, especially I started with the people that I actually knew who were already realtors. And first deal just happened to be a realtor that brought me a pocket listing. I actually made over $125,000 on that first flip, which is kind of a unicorn deal. But and I probably passed up on a lot of deals before I actually got that first deal. But I was just making sure this first one was going to be good, and it ended up being really good.
Got it. Well, wow, that's a heck of a way to start with $100,000. So what is a pocket listing, and why would a realtor not list that on the market? Could you explain that?
Yeah, so just like we deal with with our direct to seller marketing, we get a seller. The realtor gets a seller that doesn't want to go through the usual hassles of a listing, cleaning up their house, doing repairs, having people coming in and out of their house. So what they do is they don't put it on the market. They call the few investors they know and send them out to get a cash offer to close quickly, right? Mm-hmm. Because that's what the seller wants. And so it's really just, hey, they keep it in their pocket. They don't throw it on the market and expose it to everybody. They just show it to a few investors that they know are good and reliable and get an offer. And I get quite a few deals that way still to this day. It's actually a great source, and it's free. You don't have to spend marketing dollars on it.
What's in it for the realtor to sell it to you versus another flipper, for example?
So I always offer for them they could represent me on the buy if they want to do that, and they can also sell it on the back end once I'm done with the renovation. So they're incentivized to sell it to me versus someone else.
So they can kind of make triple commission, right? Because they're representing the seller. You're allowing them to represent you. And then, of course, they get to sell it when it's fixed up.
Exactly.
Nice.
Exactly. Double dipping, triple dipping.
What did you do to make that house worth $100,000 profit?
Yeah, so we did about $150,000 rehab on that house. It was a very unique house in a great area. It was on 5 acres, which, I don't typically recommend for your first flip. You want to flip something that's going to attract a lot of buyers. This was a more luxury price point. We ended up selling it at $600,000. But it was just, we could just tell, there was quite a bit of comps that supported this house, and this house needed a bunch of work. It had, a handicapped lady that wasn't maintaining it well, and she needed to sell it quick. She was actually moving into a new build. And so we gave her an offer at the time of $270,000, and it was a big project, and I definitely made a lot of mistakes, but the deal was good enough that we still made quite a bit of cash. Now, if I had gotten that deal today with what I know, I probably could have turned it into a $200,000 profit. But, it was a good enough deal to start, and we made quite a bit.
Man, that's really nice that worked out so good. One of my first mistakes was paying the contractor up front and then letting them get too busy with other people's projects. And I'm like, hey, hello, where are you at? And they're not responding. What was some of your mistakes on that first deal?
It was all same thing. Managing the contractor, having clear expectations laid out, having bonuses or minuses if you weren't on time with finishing stuff, material costs. Just I was just winging it, just like, when you get into, for me, I'm just like, I want to go as fast as possible when I start something.
Me too.
And I don't really look at the details. I'm not very detailed. Like I said, I'm not a data oriented guy. And I just wanted to do a deal and do a deal fast. So I didn't really follow the correct procedures. And obviously I've learned since then, but it was definitely just the management of the contractor, the pay schedule, what the expectations were, everything across the board. Because I think when we first got quoted that project, I think we were only going to spend about 100, and we ended up spending upwards of 150,000. So it definitely got out of hand. But again, a good deal, you can make it work either way.
Yeah, so it's really important to leave yourself a healthy profit margin, because there's stuff that comes up like that, especially on your first few deals.
Exactly.
Yeah, that eat into the profit. So, man, what do you feel like? What year was it that you did that first deal?
That was 2021. So, like I said, I started 4 years ago, basically this month, and then that January, within the first 30 days, I think it was like January 3rd or whatever, I got that first deal.
Got it.
Got the first deal. And obviously, with that big renovation being a first deal, I'd actually completed and sold some other deals before I got done with this one. But as far as acquiring the first one, this was the first one. Ended up selling it about 6 months later.
Got it.
Making that profit.
So what were you doing before you found that first deal?
I was in a sports betting consulting business.
Oh, really?
Completely other field. Yeah. Ended up selling the company and
Got it.
So, one of the advantages that a lot of people don't have when they get into this business is I had quite a bit of cash.
Yeah.
And so I could buy these houses, take them down, pay for the renovation costs. I didn't know about getting private money and learning all these lender terms
or
and whatnot.
Even wholesaling.
I was like, I've got the cash. I'm just going to buy these cash and deal with it. So that was a big advantage to my start, and probably why I started so quickly. I did 33 deals my first year. And it was a big advantage for sure. But I capitalized on having that cash and made some things happen.
And it sounds like with previous business experience, you had an understanding that you're not going to get a deal from the first realtor that you talked to. 100%. You probably stayed focused for months, I'm guessing, talking with different realtors before you finally found one with a pocket listing. Is that true?
100%. And still to this day, those relationships that I built during that first year, I still get deals to this. Like this year, I've done deals with some of those realtors I did my first deal. And, just creating those relationships can be a very good return on your time because, we spend so much money to get a deal, when we're direct to seller marketing. Having one of those come without having to spend any marketing dollars it's very valuable and really helps that bottom line at the end of a month.
Yeah. So I could tell you the worst business day that I ever had was when I realized I hired, we had a lot of success for 4 years, no dips whatsoever, just straight up. And then I hired 20 extra employees because I was hot on doubling down and just growing as fast as possible. And around that time, we started to get less customers because there was some competition on the app. So all of a sudden, I had a very profitable business that became break even. And that was like one of the biggest stressful moments in my life. Thankfully, we got through it I didn't have to let anyone go. It kind of shifted people over to marketing. And we started forming our own marketing team and getting the word out instead of relying on other referrals. Because we primarily referred on that previously. But it took me about like 9 months to figure that out. And man, I didn't sleep well. I kind of let some of my social relationships fade away because all I could think about was like, how do I solve this problem for myself, but also for everyone who depends on me? Just curious if you had anything in your 4-year history that kind of left you feeling uneasy, or maybe was like a really tough day or tough call that we could learn from.
It's funny you say that. I have had to let go 45 people from my staff this year.
Oh my gosh.
So
wow.
Very similar experience that you were having. The only difference is I didn't have somewhere for them to go. I had to let them go. We scaled very, very quickly revenue, and we weren't scaling profit. And we had some bad months that we realized the model that we were doing wasn't working. At the peak, we had 59 employees, and that was basically a year ago today. And we just realized the model wasn't working. We had some interest rates hike up, the market got tough. We started having some struggling months where we were losing some significant money, and we had to make some tough calls. And it's been a slow a slow burn too. It wasn't like, hey, this happened all over one night. It was like, we had to let go 5 in a month, and then another 5, and then 10, and it was really tough. But if I wanted to survive and if I wanted to keep it going, it was either shut the doors or make this decision. And ultimately, we decided it was best to let those people go, keep the best employees we had, and we've been able to turn it around. And definitely the hardest time I've had in my business career, no doubt about it. And I think that I learned a ton. I learned a ton from scaling too quickly, learned a ton from just scaling a model that you're just chasing revenue and you're not chasing profit. And that's when you create problems. And so it's been a tough year. And the reason I haven't been to this conference in over a year is because of all that going on. But back on my feet, we've had some of the best net profit months we've had in the past 2 months. And I'm hoping it continues.
Man, I'm so glad you're here. One of the mistakes I made when I was going through that tough time was not reaching out to others.
Sure.
And if something like that were to happen again, I would definitely feel more compelled to reach out right away because I feel like that's the opposite of what is good. But I know I was like personally embarrassed, so I stopped going to stuff as well, and I just stayed at home. So I'm not sure if that was part of it at all, but appreciate you sharing that. That's a really tough decision to make, but ultimately it sounded like you had to continue the business for a portion of the people that were there.
Yeah, it's definitely not an easy call to make, but the thing with this game is you got to avoid game over, and there will always be tough times in business. There's going to be other tough times that happen during my career as a businessman, but it's how you navigate it, how you bounce back, and learn from the previous mistakes you made.
Yeah.
I definitely won't make some of the mistakes that I made in the past. There's 100% lessons from that.
But one of the things I was proud of was I shared the financials with everybody very openly.
Yeah.
And through the following few months, some of the people found other jobs on their own because they could see the financials, right? They could tell like, oh, wait, this is not going in a great direction.
Sure.
And so that actually helped correct itself. The people who weren't as bought into the mission, because let's face it, like when you hire 20 people in 3 months like I did, you are going to get some people that are taking it because it's a job, not because it's the most important thing for them.
Sure.
But one thing I was thankful about and noticed was like that it kind of right-sized itself for us as well as we worked through that tough time, and I didn't have to like make any cuts. So
yeah,
it's tough to be transparent because you're worried about
you're
worried about
creating fear in the organization.
I was worried about that.
Fear will slow you down too, and it'll create bad habits for the employees. We had to do the same, but we were transparent every month. We did our town hall, and we were like, hey guys, things still are not great. There's probably going to be some things that are happening this month, and we can't say exactly what's going to happen, but it was and we told them, hey, we're still planning on keeping the best people, so prove yourself as the best, and you'll be here. But it's just tough when it's like you'd almost rather do it all at once versus have that month after month after month of that slow burn. But that's the way we had to do it to maintain what we were doing and stay in the game.
Yeah.
So
what was the best day, would you say, of your business so far?
Man, honestly, I think it's pretty hard to top a 600K wholesale.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we closed.
What was that deal?
So it was 9 houses. A guy got 9 mailers from us on his 9 rental properties. Said, I want to sell them all. We negotiated a deal for $1.48 million. Sold them within 28 days for $2.1 million to one buyer. And it was a big deal. It's
That's
like
crazy.
One of those unicorn deals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how did you find it? You remember what marketing strategy led you to this deal?
It was mailers, yeah. He got literally 9 pieces of mail for every property, gathered them up, gave us a call. We had the contract within a day. And it was one of those things like, hey, I've never had 9 houses before, to try to sell all together. And we just worked it out, right? We found a buyer that was interested in the whole portfolio, and we thought we had a good deal, wasn't 100% sure. But then when we started negotiating with several different buyers, we're like, okay, we have a monster deal. Let's get this thing closed.
That's awesome. Do you remember what data set he was a part of that actually received the mail?
Can't speak specifically on that. I don't know. It was March of 2022, and we had been direct to seller marketing for 5 months.
Yeah.
So very new to the whole direct-to-seller marketing. Didn't really know what we were doing, and hit a home run.
Got it. I know you previously said you use DealMachine and you don't use it now. What did you used to use it for, by the way?
Yeah, so when I was before we had built this big company, and obviously we're not that anymore, I spent a lot of times driving for dollars, right? Mm-hmm. And I wanted to be able to drive by this house, get that thing skip trace, and call them immediately. I didn't want to wait. I didn't want to write down the address in my notepad, go back to some other program. I wanted to do it right then. I wanted to search the address and get it. And I got several deals that way. Now, me personally, I don't love driving around looking for properties like that anymore, but we have had people in the past use it, and we'll JV a deal with them that they found the deal from DealMachine.
Yeah.
So I think it's especially awesome for people that are starting out and trying to get their first deals. I think it's amazing for that, because when you drive by a house that's run down, has tarps on the roof, garbage everywhere, that's going to be a deal for somebody.
Right.
That's a great lead, right? And just buying a full data set and trying to cold call it through it all, you're probably going to be working a lot of stuff that's not a deal, right? And so I think it's awesome, especially for those people that are just starting out, want a cheaper way to get in the game, to get some motivated sellers.
Well, you might be interested in AI looking at the image now to tell if it's got a tarp on the roof, or if the mailbox is stuffed, or if there's really tall grass. It can do that. Did you know that?
I did not know
through
that.
Through the Google images, it can scroll through and evaluate that type of stuff.
And create a list for you.
Yeah, exactly.
That's cool.
Yeah,
I did not know
that. Just the capabilities of AI are just expanding rapidly. And we were able to implement that a couple weeks ago, actually.
That's super cool. We'll have to talk about that for sure after this.
Yeah. So part of our coming out of that kind of issue that I mentioned was just innovating, adding new features beyond driving for dollars. And so I'm proud of that being one of the things we've done in the last year or so. To have 44% growth last year when it was a tough year for, everybody, service providers and real estate investors, and kind of makes me think anytime we've done well, it's because we did something well. And anytime we didn't do well, it's because we weren't doing something well.
Sure.
It's I don't allow my team to blame the market anymore, because it's kind of a crutch, or can be an excuse. And
it is.
And I guess it's just not a helpful way to think, right? So.
Well, and if you look at it, no matter what's going on in the market, there's always somebody who's winning at a big clip, right?
Yep.
And so for me, I see all these investors here. There's plenty of guys that are still winning in a tough market. That's no excuse to blame the market, right? We can win through this, but maybe we've got to innovate, like you said, or adjust some strategy, change some things. That's what we've been working on doing. Now, I wouldn't say we're out of the woods and have an amazing business right now, but I think we're tenfold better than we were, this time last year. And that's something I can hang my hat on.
Yes. I wanted to tell you about when I first started out, my motivation changed. And I was curious for you if there's something that really drives you. So for example, when I started out, I don't want to say my parents didn't believe in me, but they just didn't think about things in a business mindset. They hadn't, had a business themselves, and they were kind of worried that I was getting into real estate when their friends had properties that were complete failures. But they were kind of accidental landlord inheritance type properties. They didn't have a lot of intention, right? So I could go to meetups and see that, well, people do this successfully. So I know that's how I can do it. And of course, over the years, as I became more successful, that wasn't driving me anymore. My parents are very happy. They see that it works well. I treated them to concerts and first-time experiences like that, which felt really good. But now it's almost kind of I just like the competition. I like getting better. It drives me to figure out how I could serve more people. That's kind of what pumps me up. Competition with myself. Was curious, what drives you?
Yeah, so definitely initially, and still to this day, the main thing that drives me is competition as well. I think business is the ultimate game, and I hate to lose. There's nothing more that I can't stand than losing. I've been big in sports my whole life, and a competition, and whether it's we're playing ping pong, or we're throwing darts, or we're playing basketball, I want to beat the crap out of you. And especially when I come to these events, I look at other people here, you're a smart guy, but there's no reason I shouldn't be beating you. and seeing people doing better than me, like that really drives me. The one thing that has changed, that has added motivation, is seeing other people on the team win. You know, changing lives. Like, you know, a guy who came in, my first employee, I've gave him ownership in the company. You know, he's done really well for himself since he joined. He came out of corporate America, and he's absolutely earned everything he's got.
Yeah.
But me recruiting him over and bringing him into this world is going to change his life for the better, and his family's life. He's got young kids like I do too, and I could really hang my hat on that. I really like seeing that, and I want to do more of that as I grow. But still, I would say the main drivers, man, I just want to win. That's it.
Yeah.
You know?
It's really rewarding. At first, I was nervous about being responsible for somebody's livelihood, but then now I'm kind of worried if they were to quit. Like that would affect my livelihood because they're so involved, they're so important to the business now. And I was really happy with this past year. We were able to give like big bonuses. We don't do that all the time, but it's awesome because everybody truly is like deserving of it. You know what I mean? We've kind of ironed out the team. You said you've kept on and held on to some of your best people, and it's rewarding to work with people like that. It pushes me, and so it's super thankful, and it's such an awesome part of owning a business to be able to do like that and help people win.
100%. Couldn't agree more, man. Couldn't agree more. It's awesome to see your people win. It definitely elevates my mood. Like when we were going through that period of losing, man, that just it kills you. It kills your ultimately your happiness. And obviously you got to look at things in perspective that, hey, you may be losing here, but people are going through much worse things, and things could be much worse than they are. But it still sucks when it's going on, especially when not only are you losing, your people are losing too.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep. There's always somebody better. There's always somebody worse. We tend to look at the people who have it better and just forget about how far we've come from where we were at or how others have it.
1,000%, man.
Well, that's a good thing to end on, I feel like. Do you have any other, like a closing piece of advice or something you're looking forward to in 2025?
Closing piece of advice, I would say, for people wanting to get in real estate, go as fast as you can, but always try to avoid game over. So, when I've lost a lot of money on flips and over my 4 years, like a lot of money. I've made exponentially more money, but I'm not scared to go out there and give it a try and lose, but you got to make sure the loss is not going to be game over for you. I think that's one of the biggest things, is be willing to fail as fast as possible, but just make sure that failure is not going to be the game over, right? That's probably my biggest lesson as far as looking forward to 2025. I think it's just, continuous improvement, being a better version of myself, having a better business than the month before every single month.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing. What's your social media, by the way?
So you can find me, Clint Buys ATL. Like I said before, I'm in the Atlanta market. So Clint Buys ATL. It's pretty much all my socials. Clint Cooper on Facebook. But yeah, man, thank you for having me. This has been awesome.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to the DealMachine Real Estate Investing Podcast. Please leave us a review and follow along wherever you're listening to your podcast.